At 58, Deion Sanders stands in a stage of life where the noise has finally settled. The stadiums are silent, and the roar that once followed him everywhere has faded into memory. Yet the truths that shaped his rise, his clashes and his legacy, have never stopped echoing inside him. For most people, Deion was the man who lived in glitter, and Spotlight the icon who turned touchdowns into theater and made every camera chase him like he was built from pure electricity. But behind the flash of prime time was a man who carried unresolved battles. Every grin he flashed came from a place of defiance. Every celebration masked a confrontation he never forgot. The persona that entertained millions was not born from arrogance, but from protection. It was armor he forged when early coaches dismissed him as a track star pretending to play football. It was armor he tightened when veterans resented his swagger before he ever stepped onto the field. And it was armor he learned to depend on when the league tried to force him into its mold, telling him how a player should speak, behave, and exist. Through that journey, 5 figures left marks deeper than any tackle. 5 individuals who challenged him publicly or quietly, tried to diminish him, shaping his career in ways fans never saw. Some questioned his dedication. Others doubted his loyalty. A few simply could not accept that a player could shine so brightly on his own terms. Tonight, we peel back that armor and uncover the 5 hidden truths Deion Sanders carried through the chaos of the 90s, the rivalries that shaped his identity, and the cold reality that even the brightest star in the league had a list of enemies he never truly forgave. Because when a man chooses to shine without apology, the world will always try to drag him back into the dark. Deion Sanders did not simply enter the NFL, he collided with it. When he arrived in the late 80s, the league was built on disciplined conformity and an unwritten expectation that players should keep their heads down and follow the system without questioning its authority. Deion rejected all of it from the start. Born in Fort Myers, Florida, he grew up in an environment where confidence was survival and speed was the only currency that mattered. By the time he reached Florida State, his athleticism had already made him a phenomenon. But it was his unapologetic flair that truly separated him. Coaches, commentators, and rivals were divided. Some saw a rare generational talent. Others saw a young man they believed cared more about attention than football. That perception followed him into the NFL, where he joined a league unprepared for someone who treated the field like a stage and the camera like an old friend. At cornerback and kick returner, Deion possessed a level of speed that felt supernatural. Quarterbacks learned quickly that throwing in his direction was a gamble with their careers. His footwork, his instincts, and his ability to change direction without losing speed made him a threat on every snap. But the real tension began when he embraced the spotlight in ways that no previous defensive player had dared. Deion celebrated interceptions with the joy of an entertainer danced down the sideline after touchdowns and wore suits, chains, and colors that broke the conservative visual identity the league preferred. His existence alone forced the NFL to confront what it feared most, a player who understood his value and refused to let anyone define him. That confidence challenged coaches who believed discipline came before individuality. It irritated teammates who felt overshadowed. It angered executives who worried that his persona was bigger than their franchise. Yet, while the image of prime time became a cultural icon, it masked the deeper conflict shaping his life. Deion wanted greatness, but he also wanted freedom, and in a league built on control that made him both admired and despised. As his career rose, so did the friction around him, creating a series of personal battles that would define not only his reputation, but the story of his entire era. Those battles did not fade with time. They shaped him, hardened him, and left behind 5 defining conflicts that reveal more about Deion Sanders than any highlight reel ever could. Jerry Glanville was the first NFL figure who truly collided with the force of Deion Sanders. When Deion entered the Atlanta Falcons locker room in 1989, Glanville was already a character of his own. He wore black, talked like a showman, and built a persona that mixed rebel energy with old-school football toughness. On paper, it seemed like the perfect match. A flashy young superstar paired with a head coach who loved entertainment as much as discipline. But beneath the surface, their relationship became one of the earliest and most defining conflicts of Deion's career. Glanville expected loyalty and submission to his system, while Deion came into the league with a crystal-clear belief that he would not shrink for anyone. Both men wanted to control the atmosphere around them. Both men wanted to set the tone for the team. And both men understood the power of image. That made cooperation difficult from the start. The tension grew quickly. Glanville appreciated Deion's talent, but he questioned whether the young cornerback could balance football with baseball media attention and the growing celebrity identity that surrounded him. To Glanville, being a Falcon required full commitment. To Deion, commitment did not require sacrificing freedom. Their philosophies collided every time cameras entered the building. Glanville wanted the spotlight on the team. Deion attracted the spotlight naturally, even unwillingly at times. It was not a matter of disrespect. It was simply part of who he was. Instead of celebrating that magnetic presence, some members of the coaching staff saw it as a threat to their authority. The defining moment of their clash came during Deion's early seasons in Atlanta. As he continued balancing football and baseball, speculation swirled about whether he could truly serve two masters. Glanville made public comments hinting that Deion needed to prove his dedication. Deion responded through performance, not words. In a game that season, he returned a punt for a touchdown, stepping into the end zone with the swagger that would become his signature. The stadium exploded with energy. Fans embraced it. Teammates admired it. But Glanville did not. He saw a moment of brilliance transformed into a moment of defiance. Instead of focusing on the 60-yard explosion of athletic genius, Glanville focused on how Deion celebrated. It was the beginning of a pattern that would repeat throughout Deion's career. When he played within the system, he was praised. When he expressed himself, he was questioned. The deeper truth behind Glanville and Sanders was simple. They were too similar in all the wrong ways. Both were showmen who believed in commanding a room. Both had strong visions of what leadership looked like. Both carried chips on their shoulders. But when a head coach wants to be the loudest personality and a young superstar walks in, already commanding more attention, friction becomes inevitable. Glanville tried to mold Sanders into a quieter version of himself. Sanders refused. He never apologized for his confidence. He never softened his personality to make others comfortable. Instead, he doubled down and used criticism as fuel. Every time Glanville questioned him, Deion answered with a play that no one else in the league could make. In time, their relationship settled into mutual respect, but the conflict left a permanent imprint on Deion. It taught him that talent alone would never protect him. He had to fight for his identity, even from people who claimed to be on his side. Glanville was not a villain, but he was the first powerful figure who attempted to contain the version of Deion Sanders that the world would eventually celebrate. That resistance shaped Deion's understanding of fame, identity, and control. And the cold truth is that while they worked together, Deion never forgot how quickly admiration could turn into resentment when a man refuses to dim his own light. Tim McKyer was not a household name to casual fans, but inside NFL circles, he was known as one of the most competitive, sharp-tongued, and prideful defensive backs of his era. When Deion Sanders arrived in Atlanta, McKyer was already an established cornerback, a veteran with Pro Bowl credentials and a reputation for speaking his mind without hesitation. He believed he had earned the right to be the anchor of the Falcons' secondary. Then Deion walked in. Younger, faster, louder, hungrier, and instantly more magnetic than anyone McKyer had ever shared a locker room with. From the moment they lined up side by side, tension was unavoidable. McKyer came from an old-school mentality where respect was earned through years of grinding, not through highlight plays or media attention. He watched Deion bring cameras to practice reporters into the locker room and a level of public fascination that overshadowed the entire defensive unit. To McKyer, it felt like someone had skipped the line. To Deion, he was simply being who he had always been. The clash between their personalities created a cold rivalry that teammates immediately noticed. McKyer questioned whether Deion was committed. Deion questioned why a veteran felt threatened by a young player's success. Neither man backed down, and the energy between them became a constant current running through the room. The moment that crystallized their conflict came during a heated practice session. McKyer challenged Deion, repeatedly pressing him physically and verbally, trying to test whether the young star would break. Deion did not. He responded with interceptions, breakups, and a level of speed that forced McKyer to accept something he did not want to face. The defense watched as the two corners pushed each other to the edge. On one particular play, Deion baited the quarterback into a throw, snatched the ball, and sprinted past McKyer with a smile that cut deeper than any hit. It was a silent message. The throne was no longer shared. But the real explosion came off the field. McKyer began making remarks to the media, suggesting that some players cared more about image than the game. He never used Deion's name, but everyone knew who he meant. Deion fired back, not with words but with performances that made it impossible to ignore him. Every punt, return, every interception, every sideline high step widened the gap between them. The more Deion excelled, the more the rivalry soured. McKyer's frustration grew as his own role diminished. What had been a battle of pride slowly turned into resentment. Their dynamic revealed a deeper truth about Deion's early years in the league. His rise was not just challenged by coaches or management. It was challenged by players who felt threatened by a new type of superstar. Deion was not simply good. He was transformative. He changed expectations for defensive players, and that made some veterans uncomfortable. McKyer represented an older generation that valued quiet professionalism. Deion represented a new era of confidence, individuality, and entertainment. Their worlds were never going to merge peacefully. As time passed, McKyer's presence faded while Deion's legacy grew. The two men never publicly reconciled. There was respect for talent, but no true closure. The conflict taught Deion another essential lesson. Sometimes the harshest battles come from the people standing closest to you. And the cold truth is that McKyer never forgave losing the spotlight to a younger, brighter force. Likewise, Deion never forgot how quickly competition could turn into hostility when success begins to reshape an entire room. Andre Rison and Deion Sanders were never meant to coexist peacefully. They were two supernovas forced into the same orbit, and the gravitational pull between them created one of the most volatile personal rivalries of the early 90s. Rison was already the Falcons' star receiver, the emotional core of the offense and the face of the franchise before Deion exploded onto the scene. He played with intensity, carried himself with swagger, and believed he was the heartbeat of Atlanta. Then came Deion, faster, flashier, more electrifying, and instantly more beloved by a city craving excitement. For Rison, that was the beginning of a slow burn that eventually ignited into a full blaze. The tension between them was not subtle. It began with ego, but it grew into something deeper. Rison hated the idea that a defensive player could become the most famous figure in the building. He hated that every camera turned toward Deion even when the offense scored. And he hated that the franchise began shaping its identity around a cornerback who danced, joked, and celebrated with a confidence that Rison believed he had already earned. What bothered him most was not the attention itself. It was the feeling of displacement, the sense that Deion's arrival shifted the entire spotlight in a way he could not control. The defining moment came in 1994 when Rison joined the Kansas City Chiefs and faced Deion, who was then playing for the San Francisco 49ers. This was no ordinary matchup. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and it exploded before the coin toss. During warm-ups, Rison made it personal. He confronted Deion shouting across the field, letting years of quiet resentment erupt. Deion smiled unbothered, which only fueled Rison further. When the game began, the rivalry turned physical. On a run play far from the ball, Rison grabbed Deion and threw a punch. Deion retaliated. A full brawl erupted in front of a national audience. Helmets swung, coaches pulled bodies apart, flags flew everywhere. It was chaos, but it was also something more. It was a glimpse into just how deeply Rison despised the man across from him. After the fight, Rison dismissed Deion publicly, calling him overrated and soft. Deion responded by letting the scoreboard speak. The 49ers dominated the game, and Deion delivered a performance that reminded everyone why he was the most feared cornerback in football. In a moment that became instantly iconic, Deion intercepted a pass and sprinted down the sideline for a pick-six high stepping as he passed Rison. It was a message, a declaration, a final punctuation mark on years of resentment. The crowd erupted, and the cameras captured the image that would outlive both men's careers. Rison's fury was visible on the sideline. Deion's triumph was undeniable. Their rivalry revealed one of the fundamental truths of Deion Sanders' journey. Greatness comes with a cost, especially when it shines brightly enough to blind the people around you. Rison believed he was the rightful star, the one who should define Atlanta's identity. Deion believed he had earned every ounce of attention through performance and personality. Neither man was wrong. They simply existed in a world too small for both of them to dominate. Their conflict never truly healed. It became part of the mythology of both careers. And the cold truth is that Rison never forgave the moment Deion danced past him into the end zone. Likewise, Deion never forgot how violently jealousy can erupt when your light becomes too bright for someone else to endure. George Seifert was a quiet force in the NFL. A coach who believed in structure, discipline, and absolute control over every detail surrounding his team. When Deion Sanders joined the San Francisco 49ers in 1994, Seifert saw an opportunity to add a once-in-a-lifetime talent to a roster already built for a championship run. But he also saw a personality he feared might disrupt the precise machine he had spent years building. Their relationship became one of the most complicated conflicts of Deion's career, not because of open hostility, but because of the constant push and pull between who Deion was and who Seifert needed him to be. From the beginning, Seifert admired Deion's unmatched skill. He respected the talent. He respected the work ethic. But he could not fully embrace the showmanship. Seifert was a coach who preferred calm to chaos. Deion was a player who turned chaos into momentum. As the season progressed, their differences became more obvious. Deion brought energy to the locker room, music to the training sessions, and charisma to every Sunday. Seifert valued silence, preparation, and rigid professionalism. To him, success came from order. To Deion, success came from freedom and expression. They both wanted to win, but they saw the path to victory through entirely different lenses. The leading catalyst of their tension was Deion's status within the team. He arrived as a megastar, joining a roster with established leaders who had spent years chasing championships. Some players embraced him. Others questioned whether he deserved to walk in and instantly become the heartbeat of the defense. Seifert noticed the shift in locker room dynamics and worried that too much attention on one player would disturb the unity he valued. Deion felt those concerns but refused to change who he was. He believed individuality did not weaken a team. He believed authenticity strengthened it. Their differences were philosophical, but in the pressure cooker of a championship season, philosophy easily turns into conflict. The defining moment came during a late-season stretch when Seifert made strategic decisions that Deion felt limited his ability to impact games the way he believed he could. In meetings, Seifert emphasized structure. On the field, Deion broke structure to create opportunities that only he could see. In a critical game, Deion made an aggressive play call on instinct, cutting across the field for an interception that changed the entire momentum. The stadium erupted. Teammates celebrated. But Seifert did not. To the coach, the play was brilliant but reckless. To Deion, it was proof that trusting instinct could deliver what strategy alone could not. Their silent disagreement became a gap that neither of them attempted to bridge. Despite the friction, the 49ers won the Super Bowl that season, and Deion delivered one of the greatest individual campaigns in NFL history. But even in the glow of victory, the conflict remained. Deion believed he had earned not just respect, but freedom. Seifert believed no player should ever operate outside the system, no matter how talented. When the season ended, Deion chose not to return. The decision was framed publicly as business, but the deeper truth was emotional. He felt constrained, not celebrated. He felt watched, not trusted. And he felt that his brilliance was appreciated only when it stayed within boundaries drawn by someone else. The cold truth is that although Seifert and Sanders achieved greatness together, their partnership was built on tension. Seifert never fully accepted the idea of a player whose charisma rivaled the team itself. Deion never accepted the idea that a coach could limit the style that made him extraordinary. They respected each other's excellence, but they never aligned. And that division shaped the next chapter of Deion's career, pushing him toward a place where he would embrace his identity more fiercely than ever before. Jerry Jones was the most powerful and polarizing figure Deion Sanders ever confronted. Their story did not begin with hostility, but with ambition. Jones wanted to build a dynasty in Dallas that would define an era. Deion wanted a franchise that recognized not only his talent, but his worth. When the Cowboys signed him in 1995, it felt like the perfect marriage. The biggest star in football, joining the biggest brand in the sport. Fans imagined harmony. The league imagined dominance. But beneath the surface, the relationship between Jones and Sanders was charged with tension from the moment ink touched paper. Jones saw Deion as a transformative force, a player who could tilt the scale of the entire conference. But he also saw him as an asset, a symbol, and at times a bargaining chip in the Cowboys' relentless pursuit of championships and commercial influence. Deion respected Jones's boldness and his willingness to spend money to win, but he also sensed something deeper. Jones wanted control. He wanted every star in Dallas to orbit around him. That desire clashed directly with Deion's identity as a man who set his own terms, walked his own path, and refused to become a prop in anyone's empire. Their conflict took shape in moments that seemed small but carried heavy meaning. When Deion advocated for more freedom in training routines, Jones pushed back. When Deion wanted input on defensive schemes that affected how offenses targeted him, Jones reminded him of the chain of command. Even off the field, they clashed quietly. Jones wanted Deion to represent the Cowboys brand with a tone that fit the franchise's legacy. Deion wanted to represent himself. He believed individuality was strength, not a distraction. Jones believed the star on the helmet came first. Deion believed greatness came from authenticity, not obedience. The defining moment between them came during negotiations for a restructured contract when Deion began feeling the physical toll of playing both defense and special teams. He believed his contributions should be recognized with long-term stability. Jones disagreed, citing risk age and team financial planning. What was framed publicly as business was privately a battle of philosophy. Jones expected loyalty to the organization above all else. Deion believed loyalty had to flow in both directions. When that balance was not there, he began to detach emotionally from the franchise. Another flashpoint came when Jones questioned Deion's decision to publicly express interest in returning to baseball during the offseason. To Jones, it was a threat to the brand. To Deion, it was simply his right as a multi-sport athlete. The conversation escalated into a deeper disagreement about control purpose and authority. Deion felt the Cowboys wanted him to be a star only within their boundaries. Jones felt Deion was stretching the limits of what any player should be allowed to do. Their relationship shifted from respectful cooperation to a quiet standoff between two titanic personalities who refused to bend. Despite the friction, they reached the mountaintop together. The Cowboys won the Super Bowl, and Deion's impact was undeniable. His coverage shut down entire sections of the field. His returns shifted momentum. His presence altered offensive game plans every week. But even in triumph, their conflict remained unresolved. Jones admired the results, but not always the process. Deion cherished the victory, but not the environment that surrounded it. When his time in Dallas ended, the separation felt inevitable. The cold truth is that Jerry Jones wanted Deion Sanders the player, but struggled to contain Deion Sanders the phenomenon. Deion respected Jones the owner, but never accepted a relationship built on power imbalance. They achieved greatness together, but they did so while pulling in opposite directions. And for Deion, Jerry Jones became the most defining example of what it costs to be a superstar in a league where even the brightest talents must battle for the right to be themselves. The unexpected conflict that shaped Deion Sanders more than any single rival or coach was not a person at all. It was the sports media machine of the early 90s, a force that followed him everywhere and defined him long before he had a chance to define himself. Reporters talk. Show hosts, columnists, and analysts built entire narratives around his every move. Some praised him as a revolutionary talent. Others targeted him with relentless scrutiny. For Deion, the battle with the media was not about criticism. It was about identity. He entered the league during a period when the NFL was still deciding how to handle athletes with celebrity-level charisma. Media figures treated his confidence as a spectacle and questioned whether his flash overshadowed his commitment. They dissected his outfits, his words, his celebrations, and even his smile, with the harshness reserved for politicians, not athletes. Deion responded by leaning deeper into who he was. Instead of shrinking under pressure, he used criticism as fuel. Still, the conflict changed him. It taught him that fame came with a price he would pay every day. The defining moment came when Deion pursued baseball alongside football, triggering a media storm that framed him as distracted and selfish. Reporters questioned his priorities and predicted his downfall. Instead, he delivered some of the greatest seasons of his career. Yet, privately, the weight of constant commentary shaped his understanding of the world around him. The media was not his enemy, but it was a force he learned to navigate with caution. The cold truth is that the sports media machine helped elevate him into superstardom, while simultaneously becoming one of the most exhausting battles he ever fought. It pushed him to build thicker armor and reminded him that being extraordinary means being judged under a harsher light than anyone else. Deion Sanders' legacy cannot be understood through highlights alone. His story is not just the tale of a superstar who outran defenders and intercepted passes with supernatural ease. It is the story of a man who rose through a league that tried repeatedly to shape him into something safer, quieter, and more predictable. Every conflict along the way revealed a truth about the world he lived in and the armor he learned to build. The friction with Jerry Glanville taught him that authority often resents what it cannot control. The rivalry with Tim McKyer taught him that talent can create enemies, even when no harm is intended. The eruption with Andre Rison taught him that jealousy grows fastest when two stars are forced into the same orbit. The tension with George Seifert taught him that brilliance is not always welcomed inside systems that fear individuality. And the unending battle with the media taught him that fame is a double-edged sword that can crown a man while trying to cut him down in the same breath. Each conflict acted like a chapter in a larger journey shaping the version of Deion Sanders the world ultimately remembers. By the mid-90s, Deion had become more than a player. He was a cultural force, a symbol of confidence, entertainment, and liberation on a field that traditionally demanded silence and obedience. When he stepped onto the grass, he carried not just his own ambitions, but the weight of every critic who questioned whether a man could be authentic and still succeed in an institution built on conformity. The league had seen great athletes before, but it had never seen someone who combined performance with charisma so fearlessly. Deion forced the NFL to evolve. He turned cornerback into a marquee position. He showed young athletes that personality was not a weakness. He proved that joy and expression could coexist with discipline and excellence. The conflicts he faced did not break him. They hardened him into a pioneer. Every argument, every rivalry, and every misunderstanding pushed him toward a deeper awareness of who he was and what he represented. He learned to navigate locker rooms with caution. He learned to handle ownership with strategy. He learned to anticipate how media narratives could twist reality. These lessons shaped his leadership in ways that went far beyond the field. They allowed him to step into every new chapter of his career with clarity. When he played for the Falcons, he became their spark. When he played for the 49ers, he became their missing piece. When he joined the Cowboys, he became their statement of dominance. And through all of it, he remained unmistakably himself. The true climax of Deion's story is not found in a single play or a single season. It is found in the moment he realized that the power people tried to take from him was the very thing that made him great. He never stopped fighting for the right to express himself. He never accepted that confidence was something to hide. He never allowed others to define his value. These choices came with a cost. They created enemies, fueled controversy, and generated friction that followed him for years. But they also created a path for every athlete who came after him. In a league that once punished individuality, he showed that identity could be a weapon, not a liability. For many fans, Deion's legacy is measured by the plays that made them jump out of their seats. The punt returns, the interceptions, the sideline dances. But his deeper legacy lies in the transformation he forced upon the sport. He expanded what was possible for defensive players. He redefined what it meant to be a superstar. He made room for athletes to be multidimensional humans rather than faceless members of a machine. His confidence challenged an entire era. His authenticity inspired an entire generation. At 58, with the lights dimmed and the cameras no longer chasing his every step, the magnitude of his journey becomes clearer. The conflicts he endured did not stay behind him. They became the foundation of his wisdom as a coach, mentor, and public figure. He understands now that greatness is not a smooth climb. It is a series of collisions with people who fear what you represent. His battles with Glanville, McKyer, Rison, Seifert, and the media were not distractions. They were catalysts. They sharpened his resolve. They tested his spirit. They defined his character. And that is the core truth of Deion Sanders' story. The swagger was never the point. The celebrations were never the message. The real meaning lies in the determination to remain whole in a system that repeatedly tried to reshape him. His legacy is not only in the trophies he won, but in the freedom he embodied. He became proof that greatness cannot flourish when a man hides his true self. He showed that authenticity, even when challenged, is the strongest force a competitor can possess. And in that truth, Deion Sanders transformed the NFL forever. The story of Deion Sanders is more than the tale of a great athlete. It is a reminder that every legend carries battles the public never sees. Now that the armor is peeled back and the hidden conflicts are revealed, the question turns to you. Which rivalry shaped him the most in your eyes? Was it the early clashes with coaches who tried to control his fire? Was it the tension with teammates who felt threatened by his rise? Or was it the quiet war with the media that pushed him to build a persona strong enough to withstand scrutiny from every direction? These conflicts did not break him. They forged the version of Deion that millions came to admire. A man who refused to shrink. A man who insisted on standing in his own light. A man who proved that authenticity is worth fighting for even when it creates enemies along the way. If you believe these hidden truths reveal a deeper side of football's golden age, then this is only the beginning. There are more stories buried beneath the surface, more legends shaped by unseen battles, more confrontations that defined the sport far beyond the highlight reels. To uncover them with us, make sure to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which rivalry surprised you most and which one you believe still echoes through the league today. And if you want to continue exploring the untold stories behind the NFL's greatest icons, subscribe to NFL Hidden Truths. Every week, we reveal the conflicts, betrayals, and defining moments that shaped the men who built the sport. The stories do not end here. They only get deeper from this point forward.